Welcome back to PFTPM. We have been doing this every Tuesday all season long, and it really is amazing. We are already looking at week number 14. Back in the old days when Shireen and I discovered the NFL, that was it. Week 14, it was done. Season was over. Show isn't over, though. Stick with us, even though the PFTPM graphic is up. I assume that the show continues. Here we are. We're back. But Shireen, remember those days when it was just 14 weeks and that was it? We went straight to the playoffs and there was no wild card round. There were divisional round and conference championship, and they usually played the Super Bowl not very long after the first of the year. But we still have 3 more weeks of the regular season, and before we get to Week 15, we have to hand out the Week 14, awards. MDS joins us now. Let's do it like we always do. Offensive, defensive, Rookie and Coach of the Week. MDS, you're up first with the Offensive Player of the Week.
Well, I'm going with Lamar Jackson, who just had such an outstanding game on Monday night. He had a double-triple, my favorite stat, more than 100 yards, both rushing and passing. He had that great moment when he went straight from the locker room to the field and threw a touchdown pass, and he looked more like the MVP we saw last year than he had looked for most of this year, when he has struggled at times. This year's Ravens team has not been as good as last year's Ravens team, Lamar Jackson and others included, but I still think they're going to go to the playoffs, and I think they're going to be a tough team to beat if Lamar Jackson plays like he did last night.
Completely agree with you, MDS. He was excellent. Second 100-yard rushing game of the season. I went with Travis Kelce. I just felt like it was time we gave Travis Kelce some love. We haven't given him an award this year, and he leads the NFL in receiving yards. And we know a tight end has never done that. He's got a chance actually to break several tight end awards records, including yards and catches and everything else. It's going to take quite a bit to do it the rest of the season. But on a day that Patrick Mahomes didn't have his best day with 3 interceptions, I thought Travis Kelce had his best day. 8 catches, 136 yards, and a touchdown. The last two weeks, he's caught exactly 136 yards. So you might roll the dice and bet for 3 weeks in a row, 136 yards. But 5 of the last 6 weeks, he's over 100 yards and really playing at a high level. I think on the All-Pro team, he's a lock for tight end for that team. He's played terrific this season and played terrific on Sunday.
And he's got Hall of Fame credentials the way he's played the last several years. It helps to have Patrick Mahomes. But this is what we see. In every generation, there's a dominant team. And what happens? A bunch of those guys end up in the Hall of Fame after they get their statistics, their awards, and ultimately their Super Bowl rings. And they very well may be getting a second one this year. Kelce could be the first tight end in league history to lead the league in receiving yards. That was an idea that MDS planted last week. We looked it up. We confirmed it. And indeed, he's on track to do it. And maybe he ultimately will. My player of the week is a guy who has a chance. And the only guy who would have the chance to pull this off is Derrick Henry over the final 3 weeks. If he has 3 Derrick Henry games, we could see him go from 1532 to 2105. And wouldn't that be something? He needs 191 yards in each of the last 3 games on average to get to 2105. And 191 sounds incredibly unrealistic and improbable for anyone but Derrick Henry. We consider the teams they're playing. He has the chance to do it, and he's going to be aware of it, and the Titans need him. The only question is, will they curtail his workload in anticipation of the postseason, or just let him go for it? And I would try to find a way to keep him fresh and keep him safe and be relatively careful. But, you know, when he busts through the line and runs for 60 yards, it's not like he's going to go down halfway through. So if he can play like he's been playing, he has a chance to do it. For now, he's my offensive player of the week. And I hope, especially because he's plus 10,000 from an odds-making perspective to win the league MVP award, I hope he does it. And I hope there's someone out there that's put $100 on Derrick Henry to win the MVP, because that would be the ultimate disruption of this Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers presumption of the league MVP award. All right, defensive player of the week, MDS, who do you have?
Well, I have a guy who some people talked about as a long shot MVP candidate when he first arrived in Chicago and made such a huge impact. And I'm talking about Khalil Mack. And, you know, this year in Chicago, there's been some talk that he's not playing at that level. Maybe it's because he's been on the injury report a lot. Maybe he's not as good when he's not in Vic Fangio's defense as he was in his first year with the Bears. But he had a great game on Sunday. He did a little bit of everything He had a sack. He had a safety. He had a forced fumble. He had a fumble recovery. He deflected a pass. He had a tackle for loss. He just was doing it all. And he was that kind of player that the Bears really need him to be if they can justify what they gave up to get him and how much they're paying him. They need him to play at that level. If he has a future in Chicago and if Chicago is going to turn things around, that's the Khalil Mack that they need to see. And I thought he turned in one of his very best games as a Bear in that big win over the Texans.
He sure did, MDS. And I took the easy way out. I picked Hassan Reddick, of course, with the 5 sacks and the 3 forced fumbles. He had 7 pressures on 22 pass rushing attempts. So just an outstanding game from Reddick. And it was probably the best pass rushing game that we've seen since Adrian Claiborne had those 6 sacks against the Cowboys in 2017. And Chaz Green, that's probably the last that we've seen of him in a backup role. I know he's kind of getting maybe some starts elsewhere, but he's not played very well since then, and I think that probably ruined Chaz Green. But 7 is a record. Derek Thomas, he didn't quite get there, but it was an outstanding performance by Hassan Reddick on Sunday.
And Reddick didn't just abuse one guy. He had 3 different people he beat to get to 5. He didn't even know he had 5 until the end of the game. He never had more than 2 in any football game at any level of his entire football career. For me, it's easy. It's Aaron Donald. It's Aaron Donald every week. They need to name the Defensive Player of the Week award after Aaron Donald. He had a sack and a half. He has the lead with 12 and a half this year. And the quote from Sean McVay, and I think MDS, you wrote the story about it, that on the pick 6 that the Rams had, it was Aaron Donald out in front leading the way to block for the touchdown. So he can do it all. He is incredible. He should be, without question, the Defensive Player of the Year in 2020, and he could be the Defensive Player of the Week each and every week, and one of the reasons why the Rams are 9-4 and still have a chance to take the 1 seed in the NFC. All right, Rookie of the Week time, MDS, who do you have?
Well, I have, I think, the obvious choice, and that's Jalen Hurts. Like Lamar Jackson, he had a double, triple, over 100 yards, both rushing and passing. And, you know, he was just so much better than Carson Wentz has been that it's hard not to question what the Eagles were thinking, waiting so long to make the switch at quarterback. I think with Hurts, the Eagles are pretty clearly the best team in the NFC East. I think we're going to find that they turned to Hurts too little, too late for them to catch Washington and the Giants in the division. But if they somehow get into the playoffs with Jalen Hurts, I wouldn't want to be the wild card team that's going to Philadelphia, because that would be a tough and intriguing game, especially early on when defensive coordinators haven't had a lot of time to look at Jalen Hurts, prepare for him. I think he could really do some damage if the Eagles get to the playoffs, but I think they're going to end up falling short.
MDS, I went with the obvious choice on the defensive side of the ball and a team that may end up winning that in NFC East, and that's Chase Young. He's finally starting to play like the guy that Washington thought they were getting with that high pick, and he's really playing well. But, you know, Washington didn't score any offensive touchdowns. They scored 2 on defense, and he had one of those. And second-round safety Cameron Curl had the other one, but Young finished up with a sack, a forced fumble, a deflected pass, and that 47-yard fumble return. And I think that he's put himself firmly in that conversation for Defensive Rookie of the Year just by what he's done over the last few weeks. Didn't start out as great as he wanted or the team wanted, but boy, he's really turned it on now. We see why he was such a high pick.
And Week 17, we get to see Jalen Hurts being chased around by Chase Young as those two teams get together. And there's a chance that if the Eagles can get some help, if they can win some games, that game could decide the NFC East Championship and very likely would be the final game of the regular season on NBC Week 17. For me, it's Tua Tagovailoa, even though the Dolphins lost, for 2 reasons. First of all, there really wasn't any other rookie to give the award to this week. I checked and checked and checked and checked. And secondly, when I spoke to Patrick Mahomes after the Chiefs beat the Dolphins on Sunday, I asked him about his conversations with Tua. They share an agent, so they have that relationship. And what Patrick Mahomes said is that he was impressed that Tua, when the Dolphins fell way behind, didn't try to do too much in any one moment to make the game closer than it otherwise would have been. And he was patient. He stayed with it. Mahomes said, when I was a young quarterback, I wouldn't have been that patient. But he was very impressed by the fact that Tua didn't freak out, and he believes that that will serve Tua Tagovailoa well in the future. So he's my rookie of the week, and again, in part because there was no one else to pick. You guys squatted on the best two. Coach of the week, a little bit easier. More than enough to go around this week. MDS, who do you have?
I have Colts coach Frank Reich, who has Philip Rivers playing better football than I think people realize. I don't know if we've talked enough about what a good season Philip Rivers is having at the age of 39 on a new team. And I think you have to give Frank Reich a lot of credit for that. I think if you look at how well the Colts have played since hiring Frank Reich and how much the Eagles offense has declined since the departure of Frank Reich, I really think that he has to get a lot of credit as one of the best offensive coaches in football, both as the Eagles offensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl, as the Colts head coach since then. You know, a lot could have gone wrong with this Colts team from last year when Andrew Luck retired to this year when they got Philip Rivers, who some people thought was washed up. And yet Frank Reich just has them playing good, solid football. I really like the job that he has done. And I think the Colts are another one of these teams who they're not the ones we talk about first when we talk about Super Bowl contenders, but I wouldn't want to have to face them in January. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat.
MDS, another guy that has done a terrific job is Sean McDermott with Buffalo. And the job he came in there and turned that team around and really has them playing at a high level, a team that, as you said, you wouldn't want to play in the postseason. I think they're one of those teams that you wouldn't want to play. He's just done a masterful job. And, you know, they talked the talk in the offseason. They talked about Tom Brady being gone and, hey, we're going to go out. The division's up for grabs. We think it's ours. They've backed that up this season and really played well. And I think Josh Allen has played at a high level and really been a difference maker for that team. So I think Sean McDermott deserves a lot of credit for that. I think Coach of the Year is going to be really tough to figure out who that Coach of the Year is. But I think both of these guys that we've mentioned, Frank Reich and Sean McDermott, at least deserve to be candidates for that job, for that award.
I think Kevin Stefanski, I think, is the winner given what the Browns have done this year. I think it's going to be hard to take it from him. And on Frank Reich, MDS, it is amazing to think of what could happen in the offseason. These rumblings of Carson Wentz to Indy continue to grow, and that could maybe take the Colts back to the level they were at if Carson Wentz really benefits from a reboot the way that we think he could take them back to where they were when they had Andrew Luck, potentially. For me, it's Cliff Kingsbury. Very simple reason. The Cardinals were up against the wall. They'd lost 3 in a row and 4 out of 5, and it would have been 5 in a row but for the Hail Murray play. And Kingsbury needed a light of fire under this team, crossing the country, playing a Giants team that was in first place and on a hot streak. And to go in there and bully the Giants the way they did. And Hassan Reddick told me after the game that they were spirited all week in practice. That comes back to the coach. You know, if Sean Payton's going to say it's on me for not having my team ready to go, then credit to Cliff Kingsbury for having his team ready to go and prepared to win that game and turn it around and get themselves back into the playoff conversation. MDS, thanks as always. We'll be back with a Week 14 rewatch. Steelers at Bills when PFTPM continues right after this.